so I don't butcher it. So the first question always is, who is Ryan Krusac?
Well, that's an interesting question. It's got a lot of facets to it. I've worn a lot of hats. If you ask me who I am, I'm going to say I'm a family man.
Right.
You know, I'm a father and I'm a husband. That's how I primarily will identify myself. Everything that I do, I think, starts at that point. What do I love to do? I love to make art.
Yeah.
And right now, the current venue that I express my art through is in making handmade fountain pens. But yeah, no, I'm a father, I'm a husband, and I happen to be an artist as well.
Amazing. And well, I've not got my camera.
Sorry, on you go. I don't know, it's not got it's not got the light on it, which is worrying me.
What does that mean?
I don't know. We'll go with it.
I'm not really that important anyway.
Yes, you are. It says it's recording, so that's fine. So primarily you're a family man.
Yeah.
Is that what drove you to work from home, to make pens? So we should also talk about the fact that you're a pen maker, which we'll come back to Ryan Krusac pens. But do you think that drive for family is really what drove you to being able to work from home, having a shop at the house? Or is that just consequential to a number of other things that happened in the lead up to that?
Yeah, I think it was consequential to the lead up. You know, I started off professionally as a creative director for a textile company. I designed accent and area rugs for the big box retailers, JCPenney, Walmart, Target, Kohl's, and Costco. And it was what I fell into. I have a degree. I wanted to be an art teacher, honestly, but there was no money in it.
Yeah.
So I got a job. I built barns. I built apartments, and I did industrial construction. I put in giant steel doors and things that semi trucks back up to the dock boards. And I did that for a couple of years. You know, just trying to find my way through life. And I got a call from a textile company. I went to high school with the guy who was the creative director, and he said, "Hey, do you want a job designing?" I was like, "Yes, get me out of this world."
Yeah.
And so I took that job, and it was creative. I was back into the arts. I was designing every day. It wasn't my passion. I always did sculptural furniture on the side. I was always doing my own artwork, the things that kind of fueled me.
Right.
And then, I discovered, kind of making fountain pens completely by accident. And that became the platform on which I started doing my artwork.
And did you always know that you were going to do something creative artwork-wise from
Absolutely.
an early age? You talked about earlier, we obviously had a walk around and a show around, which we'll put into another video in itself. You'd always been around tools, you'd always been around a bit of shop experience, so there was always going to be a physical output to
Oh, absolutely.
your work.
My mom was a performing pianist and my dad was an artist. I mean, I grew up in the arts. I mean, I had paintbrushes in my hand from the time I was 3.
Yeah.
You know, my parents loved it if I was, spilling paint in the carpet and drawing on the walls. My dad's a true eccentric.
Right.
And he fostered that in me. So, I mean, from the time the earliest memories I was making art, for sure. I mean, I couldn't avoid it.
Mm-hmm. You're surrounded by it.
So you'd obviously told us earlier, but for people listening, what was that swing point that became, I'm going to make pens?
Yeah, I lost my pen. I was going down to Mexico. I was in Mexico City, and I was negotiating a merger for these companies. It was a weaving mill. We weren't into weaving, and I was like, you know what? Honestly, it was a pretentious move on my part. I was just like, I thought a fountain pen would look kind of cool, and it would kind of complete the designer aspect. I mean, I was in a very image-driven culture. And I was like, I went to grab that fountain pen, and it was the one everybody carried in first class. First class, you'd see it in the pockets when you walk back to the back of the plane.
It's like the classic pen you get when you've done 25 years at a company or something. It's that very corporate. Here's a nice pen.
Yeah, no, exactly. So I mean, that's the one I wanted, and I was gobsmacked when the guy wanted $375 for it. It's like, I mean, I bought acrylic by the ton to make carpet fiber out of. I knew black was $1.75 a pound. I mean, here's like a half an ounce. I'm just like, I'm looking at this thing. I'm looking at the craftsmanship. I knew how to make things.
Yeah.
I'm like, the most expensive part of this is the nib. That can't be more than $20. I was way wrong. It's $12. I was like, man, there's there's at most $20 in this pen, and they're selling it for $375. I'm in.
Yeah.
You know, and I called my wife from the airport. I said, honey, we just started a pen company. And she's like, what?
And that was it.
That was it. Yeah, I mean, it was 2 weeks later. I mean, actually in the airport lounge, I'm like Googling, how do you make a pen?
Yeah. So it was as fast as that? It was
as fast as that. You know, and
there
so
is genuinely, clearly money in this. Let's go.
It was a business decision for me.
Right, okay.
Because we made a strategic decision that when we had kids, one of us was going to stay home.
Right.
It was clear at this point with my job that it was going to be me in the professional world, and Julie was going to be raising the children at home.
Yep.
And I wasn't making enough, and I needed a side hustle, and I'm fine with that. So I was always looking to make an extra dollar. And here was real margin. I was like, man, this just makes a lot of sense. And it was artistic. It did with tools. It was everything that I was engaged with. So, I mean, it appealed to a lot of sensibilities for me.
Yeah.
Loved it when I discovered it. So, I mean, it was like 3 weeks later, I made my first pen. You know, I started with kit pens. I don't know if you guys are familiar with what kit pens are, but you can go on a million websites and you can find pre-made components. You basically buy a lathe and a chisel and you make a wooden cylinder.
Yep.
And you cram together these parts and you have a pen.
Yeah.
And that's how I started.
It's a good starting point.
I stuck a shingle up on the internet, and you know, my goal at this time was to make enough to pay for a family vacation.
Right.
You know, I want to make enough to take us to Disney World and not, you know, tap the working budget.
You were still working at this time?
I was working full time. And what ended up happening was I found myself working till 1 a.m. because it started working. You know, I'm kind of particular. I'm not kind of particular. I'm very particular. And I did everything as best as I could. And if it wasn't just right, it didn't go out the door.
Yeah.
And it started to be successful. More successful than I ever thought it possibly could be. And then it's probably around 2010 or 2011, a couple of key patents on nylon. And
so before we go into 2010,
okay.
When was it you started that
2007.
first kit pen? 2007 was the kit pen.
Yeah,
so we're only talking 3-4 years later.
Yeah, 3 or 4 years later, you know, I'm working ridiculous hours in the shop, and in the textile world, a couple of key patents expired, and all of a sudden there was this giant sucking sound of jobs leaving North Georgia going to India and China.
Right.
The company I was working for, we went from 400 employees down to like 88, 80, you know, to 90 in months.
Wow, okay. So real drastic job cuts.
Big drop. And I always felt like I had a kind of a bullseye on my back because I was number 3 and I was kind of expendable, honestly, in the company as the creative director and that kind of thing. It's like, so I took a job at another company hoping they were in better shape. 8 weeks later, I got let go. They fired me by text message. And this was 3 days after we found out Julie was pregnant with Caspian, my son.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh, man. So I'm sitting in the driveway, and I just got this, I'm looking at my phone, and it's like, I just got fired. And
by text.
By text message. It said, hey, your last day is tomorrow. And I just texted back, it's like, correction, today was my last day.
Oh, shit, way
like,
to fire
really?
someone, eh?
What are you going to do, fire me?
Yeah, exactly.
So, you know, Julia, she walks up to the window and she asked me, she's like, you all right? I was like, I showed her my phone. It's like, I just got fired. Man, her reaction was absolutely priceless. Man, she just said, praise God, you've been talking about trying to go full time for a long time.
Yeah.
This is your shot. Give it 6 months. Go all in for 6 months. We've got 6 months of savings. Go and see what it's like to go full time.
Yeah.
And I was like, really? And she's like, yeah, really. And man, suddenly I didn't feel so bad anymore, you know? It was just like,
Well, you get a partner on side at that point, don't you? Like, I know when we make a lot of big decisions, knowing that we're both on side and both aligned to it is so powerful.
Yeah, it was huge.
Yeah.
It was huge. I went from feeling like not a man to like, man, I got this. You know?
Yeah, good.
Man, I did my first pen show. I called the DC pen show was the next pen show. This is in July. So the next pen show was in August, which is the DC, Washington, DC. It's the biggest in the world. And there's a wait list to get on there. I called Bob Johnson, who was running the show at the time, and he just kind of laughed. He's like, dude, I've got a 3-year wait list to get into my show.
Wow.
3-year wait list just to get a table.
just
at
to
the
get a
show.
table at the show.
Wow.
That's
And I was like, come on, man. And I explained the story. I told him the story. I said, listen, man, I looked at the hotel. I was like, there's room for one more table back by, I'll pay double. Back by a bathroom, by a payphone. And he's like, you know what? I'm going to try to get you into the show. He's like, and I'll be darned, when I showed up, I didn't just have a table. I had a great table. It was in the main ballroom on one of the most traveled sections, right across from a big vendor. There was no looking back. I haven't been caught up since that show.
Amazing.
I mean, I just couldn't believe it. It was amazing.
And how long did you say it was between getting that text and that show?
Well, to the time I showed up to the show, it was from July to the first weekend in August. But I made the phone call like the day after I got fired. I mean, it was like I was on it.
Just,
like
I'm on it.
Right.
I'm on it. It's like
Yeah.
I got to do this. I have to do this.
Have to make it work.
I have to make it work.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So we've obviously seen your pens, and we'll post a bunch of videos and pictures and stuff, and to show other people about it. But how have your pens progressed from then till now? Because obviously you've grown through just being part-time in kit pens to, and as a business you've grown, and I'm sure as a person you've grown. But how's your pens also grown alongside that?
Yeah. So it didn't take long. There was a big difference between the kit pen customer that I was used to dealing with online, and then the real pen aficionado. The first pen show, this is really interesting. The first guy I ever met was a guy named Dan. He will forever be a member of our family. He was setting up at one of the big brands. I'm not going to mention any names right now, but he was their engineer.
Yeah.
And he was walking by my table, and after about 3 passes by my table, he's like, look, I don't mean to discourage you, but don't be disappointed if you don't do good at this show. And I was like, what are you talking about? I was like, he's like, well, these are kit pens. And he said, I know your story. You're going to talk about exotic woods and all these types of things that you're working with. And, and he started naming off everything, my whole sales pitch to me. And I was feeling very deflated at this point. He's like,
Yeah.
look, guys like you come and go. He's like, I'm not trying to beat you up. Your work is actually really good. He's like, these are probably some of the best kit pens I've ever seen. But he said,
you're better than kit
but
pens.
this is not your customer. These people don't want kit pens. And I'm just trying to prepare you for what you're going to encounter this weekend. Have your expectations right. I was like, whoa. That's not what I wanted to hear with a pregnant wife, you know?
No.
I was hoping for a home run. So then I started at this time, but I wasn't just doing wooden kit pens and like things. I had Scrimshaw and I had some hand painted stuff. I'm an artist and I was doing this on the pens. These were not on the table yet. So I'm starting to set up my display, and he walks back by and he sees this stuff and he's like, whoa. He's like, time out, I'm going to amend my story right now. He's like, you're going to kick it with this stuff. But here's what they're all going to say. They're going to say, man, I can't believe I'm about to buy a kit pen, but I'm loving what I'm seeing with the hand-painted things, with the Scrimshaw work you're doing on the moose antler. And man, at the end of the show, this guy was like clairvoyant. I mean, everything he said came true. And I just walked up to Dan. I was like, Dan, I don't know who you are, but you're exactly right. And can I just ride your coattails? Because you're like the smartest guy I think I've ever met. I mean, like you just... You know this space.
You know this
space.
Yeah.
And I need you to be my mentor in this space. And we've been best friends ever since.
That's brilliant.
No, it was fantastic. But he was right. The artwork, but what happened to make me evolve is all my customers were coming up to me and like, all right, I love what you're doing. I love your artwork. But God, please, can you stop doing kit pens?
Right.
It's like you've got a Ferrari and you're putting hubcaps on it.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't know. Honestly, this was
This is
a
just what I've
hobby,
been doing,
and all of a sudden it became my full-time thing. I honestly have no idea what I'm doing. I mean, I really have no clue. And it was really just an adaptation to what my customers were saying. And so then this was going down a whole new rabbit hole. I had to become a machinist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a different world than an artist. Yeah. Oh man.
So this is the point. We need to take a little bit of a break here, right? Because this is something that I never really appreciated, and I've spoke to Tim about this a lot, who we're staying with and who we're podcasting with tomorrow. Because in a pen, and I think of all the makers we do, who are they're all amazing makers, and they all do amazing stuff in their own right. But in a pen, it's such a simple surface, such a small thing, but there's so many different aspects to it.
So many skills.
You know, machining, polishing, the art side of it that you bring to it, the engraving side that Tim brings to it. You know, it seems to be that you can bring a conglomeration of different skills in the outputs of pen. It's almost like, look at this big CV. I'm just presenting it to you as a pen. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You know, so we'll get on to what all the sort of skills are that you bring to a pen. But how did that machining learning, that's a whole different world for you at this point.
Oh, it was, and it's a world that I'm not suited to. I'm an artist. I started this because, man, I could use a chisel and I could freeform and I could vibe with the wood. We could, just do our thing.
Well, that's why I'm interested in this, because
and then all of a sudden now I've got to make this thing where if it's off by 30 thousandths of an inch, it doesn't fit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Precise.
And it's like, if I would have known that going into it, I don't know that I would have done it.
All right, okay.
It's actually a good thing I had no idea how hard it was going to be.
Just went at a deep end.
Right. So I bought, the first thing I did is I went out when I finally saved up enough money, which was really tough, to run a family of 5.
Yeah.
And then
Still set aside money to grow your business.
Well, yeah. I mean, to come up with, I've always been debt averse. I always believed in cash. I never took a loan for anything I ever did. So to come up with 20 grand for a tooling, that was a big deal.
Yeah.
And it took a long time. And here I plonked down this money on this big CNC lathe to make these, threaded components and things. Where's the on button?
Yeah.
Well, there is no on button.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like you've got to know how to write code.
Yeah.
On is, M3S 800.
Yeah.
I mean, where do you even learn that?
Yeah.
And so, I was just I called Dan, and he's like, you know what? He's like, you know more than you think you do. He's like, I'm gonna come out. Let me come out and spend a weekend with you.
Yeah.
And so he did. He showed up. I picked him up from the airport, and he's at my house, and he's like, okay, I'm gonna amend what I said. You're dumber than I thought. He's like, Ryan, this is a lathe. He's like, we're gonna start at the beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, the guy had the heart of a teacher, and he just really had an amazing way of teaching me the basics to, honestly, through parable and fable almost, telling me how G-code would work. And it was this really magical experience, and when the light bulb went on, it made sense. It was still really difficult, and they still struggle with it. When you miss a negative symbol, you run the lathe into itself and everything flies apart, and it takes you 2 days to set everything back up. Oh, man, I do that way more. I mean, that's not it's not my strong suit.
Yeah.
I've learned to deal with it, and I've learned to be good enough to do, I've learned to make a good output from it. Mm-hmm. It's not to say that's not a battle. Yeah. What comes intuitively to me is the artwork, the putting the things together, the designing, all of that stuff, the specifics of making that happen. We fight a little bit. I guess it's kind of like a marriage. You're going to have your awesome, glorious parts, and then you're going to have the part that you don't want anybody else to see.
Yeah. So that was the CNC lathe.
Yeah.
And is that what really, having that, you then were able to move away from the kit parts?
Absolutely.
You could now make these parts yourself.
So I can make
and
everything
was it whole
myself.
Hog? Was it whole hog? It's like, I'm now making everything myself.
That's it. Except for the nib and the feed unit, which nobody wants me to make. I mean, the German ones, the Yovo nibs, they're the Kalishnikov of libs. You can leave those things in the dirt for 5 days and they'll still write. I mean, they're amazing. So no, I have no desire to make nibs or feeds. But other than that, no, I make every component of it, and I design everything to my spec. And I designed my first pen. I'm passionate about 2 things. I'm passionate about artwork, and I'm passionate about natural materials.
Yeah.
I designed my first pen to be a blank canvas, either for my artwork or to let the natural material display its beauty on its own. It was originally designed to have no clip. I didn't want anything to hide any of the wood, any of the stone, any of the antler that I was using, any of the natural materials that I was using. It was just to be this beautiful showcasing of nature, or my artwork if I'm painting on it.
Yeah. Amazing.
So talk about the fact that pen is a canvas to your artwork. So you've got two main ways other than the art that is the beauty of, you know, the material choice and putting it all together and polishing it and making it a pen, that's an art form in itself, and that needs to be addressed as an art form in itself. But there's also you putting your art in, and maybe and tell me if this is fair to say or not, that's maybe what makes it so recognisable as one of your pens.
Yes.
That artwork that's on it, isn't it?
Exactly. So I started doing artwork on pens kind of by accident, kind of like I started the pen company. I bought a laser engraver to be able to brand my kit pens, and I did my backwards R with the forwards K with the fountain pen down the center logo on every pen, just to where if you bought a kit pen from me, you know it's from me. The first time I engraved my logo on an Antler pen, it engraved so beautifully, I knew what I had to do. When I was a kid, my dad used to read me whaling stories. And in all the whaling stories, there were stories of the Scrimshaw, and I fell in love with the art form, and I was like, I know what I'm gonna do.
Yeah.
I'm engraving these pens. Now, I was using naturally shed moose antler instead of whalebone or ivory. And it's amazing. There's, you know, because I have an industrial background, it's all about supply chain. There's an endless supply of moose antler. Every year, there's 8 billion moose that drop their horns. And I'm never going to run out of material. It's easy to get. It's expensive, but it's easy to get.
But it's exactly that, isn't it? And, you know, for anyone that's listening that doesn't know about moose and all that jazz, they drop their horns. They just shed them.
Yeah.
They're just there.
So from May until August, they go from none until these massive antlers for the rut. They show off, they get their wife, have kids, and then they fall off.
Don't need these anymore. Yeah.
Don't need them anymore. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. So now you've got that endless supply, which is obviously a way more natural, a way more, what's the word for it? It's a better source than going to the ivory or going to the whalebone.
Well, I mean, ivory, is impossible now because even pre-ban ivory, and so I used to do some stuff on pre-ban ivory, and the company that I worked with is out of Florida. 100% of their proceeds from their pre-ban ivory sales supported the Elephant Conservancy Fund.
Right.
Which, you know, I loved. I mean, listen, I've been to Africa 5 times. I met my wife in Africa. I mean, Africa is a special place in my heart. I've seen these beasts, and for me, using the pre-ban ivory, they're dead. Yeah. What are you going to do about it? The ivory's here. Let's use it.
Especially if
let's redeem
a good cause.
I mean, all of that is going back to support this thing.
Yeah.
So, but it cracks. It's not a great material, honestly.
Right, okay.
It cracks all the time. It's a terrible material to work with. Moose antler is unbelievable. It's indestructible. It never cracks. It's the perfect material.
Really?
Oh man, yeah. There's nothing better. It stinks, but it smells like when you drill it. It smells like burning hair.
Yeah.
But I mean, over time, I've kind of even learned to like that. I mean,
it's just part of the process.
It smells like barbecue to me.
So you've now got your method of putting the art there, but you're still hand illustration, everything. Is that satisfying the art side for you? The fact that you're able to hand illustrate it all, and talk us a little bit about through how that goes from your idea and your whaling novel inspiration to actually being on the pen.
All right, yeah. So I come up with an idea and I'll draw it out. Most of the time, I'll sketch it out the old-fashioned way with a pencil and paper.
Yep.
And then from there, it needs to be digitized because I use a CNC engraving machine that'll engrave it into the antler. I like repeatability, you know, so I consider my art pens kind of like an artist print.
Yeah, okay.
You know, so you have an original, which I draw flat on paper. Sometimes, you know, we'll draw it straight using a Wacom tablet and a digital pen and draw it straight into the computer, depending on my mood, honestly.
Yeah.
I mean, I did that for 13 years in textiles. I mean, I drew every day with a digital pen and designed rugs that way. It's very intuitive. It just depends on my mood. But I approach my artwork like a lithographer would. And if you notice, if you look at the detail, all the shading is done with line weight and line spacing. And so everything, the lines, if I need a shadow, the lines just get closer together and maybe get a little bit thicker. So I kind of draw everything out like an engraver would.
It's very like old school textbook style, isn't it?
It is.
It is. Exact same.
I'm an old soul. I like that nostalgic look.
I've got a couple of cracking prints from engines and stuff like that, like original patent prints, and they're all done that way, you know, line drawn, and it's an aesthetic that you don't really see as much anymore because you can digitally render in shadow, but it's wicked. And then to transfer it onto something that you can laser engrave, it feels like it's just the best way to do it. You know, from an art point of view, because if that was obviously shaded, it's not going to transfer as well. Did you?
Yeah, lasers transfer shading horribly.
Yeah.
I mean, it looks awful.
Yeah, because it's just pixels.
Yeah. So I mean, I do everything. I design everything at 1,000 DPI. I mean, I have incredible resolution. I mean, one laser pulse is 1,000th of an inch.
Right.
I mean, if you look with an optic on the pen, the Viking Marauders, for instance, there's these tiny little figures. They've got eyeballs.
Yeah.
You know, if you zoom in on them, I mean, I love working at that kind of crazy resolution. I mean, it's.
And was the stylistic choices driven by the fact it was going to be laser engraved, or was that just always how you done it?
No, it was driven by what I wanted to do, and
Right.
I made the laser do what I wanted the laser to do.
Right.
Yeah, and that was a big learning curve. It was probably 6 months to a year before I had my first good piece.
Wow.
Off that thing, yeah.
So at that time you were still making your not kit pens through that time, but you were just experimenting with getting artwork on pens as well.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Well, actually, the artwork on the pen started before the CNC and me being vertical. I was doing Scrimshaw pens on the kit pens long before. Yeah, so that was actually the first version. That's what kept me in business, was the artwork on the pens.
Oh, of course, sorry, because you took them to the show, and that was the delineation.
That's what people were buying, but like kind of holding their nose and like, oh, okay, I'll buy it. Yeah. You know, it's a kit pen, but man, I like your artwork.
Yeah.
Yeah. And is that quite a different outlook than a lot of other pen makers have? So one thing that we speak to loads of makers, and we're really fortunate we speak to such a wide variety of makers, but the pen world is massive.
Yeah.
So we found out.
We had no idea.
No idea.
It's huge.
Yeah, it's massive. And is there many other people putting art on pens and treating pen as a canvas in the way that you are? Or are you quite unique in that sense?
Not in the way that I am, but there are others. So, you know, there are lots of makers that are doing Urushi lacquer. There's a guy, he's actually a really good friend of mine, Brian Weaver, is doing, he's carving his pens.
Oh, okay.
Iron feather pens. And of course, Tim Cullen is, you know, he's engraving on his. He's doing amazing work, you know, and he's doing his artwork in the metal.
Yeah.
You know, so there are other artisans doing amazing artwork on the pens. I don't know anybody who's necessarily hand painting or doing the Scrimshaw work.
Yeah.
You know, and so we all have our own ways of embellishing and adding our own sensibilities to it. And what I love about the pen community is I really feel like there's a true sense of camaraderie. I don't know that any of us really feel like competitors. Like, I'm very open with all of the people that are doing their artwork. I mean, Tim's a good friend. All the other makers I'm really close with. You know,
that's cool.
Yeah, I mean,
really nice.
Brian Weaver and I, man, we get together every pen show we're at. We'll smoke a cigar together and swap stories and talk about what we're doing and trade ideas. And you know, there's this notion that high tide raises all ships.
Yeah.
You know, and
Said that before.
you know, the thing is I think for most of our customers, it's not an either or. It's a both and. And this week, the customer might buy Brian's pen and not mine. But I know the next show around, they're going to come for my pen. And, you know, the way I've always approached it is I've actually walked my customers over to somebody else's table and said, you know what, this is what you're looking for.
Right.
You know, it's like, look, I want you to have, I never want to be your buyer's remorse. In the morning when you wake up, I don't want everybody to think, I should have bought the other one. It's like, go buy this pen.
Yeah.
If my pen is still talking to you tomorrow, we'll come back for it. But if it's not, I worked hard on it. I want this to go to somebody who's going to love it, not to be like, I should have bought the other one.
Yeah.
Right.
I'd rather you not buy it.
Yeah.
Honestly. I mean,
And has that always been your outlook, even when financially times were harder? Did you always still have that?
you know, it was. And you know, and then there's probably times where I probably could have had a better show if I would have been a better salesman.
Yeah.
But
I mean, but there's an honest brand behind that, isn't
well,
there?
that's it.
There's
I feel
a
like,
comeback to that.
I think the long-term effect has been I've built a good relationship with people because I don't want to sell anybody anything. I do what I do, and I want to bring people along on my journey. I have a journey that I'm on, and it's no fun when people aren't in agreement with you. You ever been in a car ride with somebody that just sucks? I mean, you know, life's too short for that. You know, I'd rather miss a sale and be in a car with people where we're having fun.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
And I was going to say repeat offenders there. Do you find that a lot of the people that buy from you are people that are repeat offenders? They will keep coming back and buying
Absolutely.
and buying because you do more and more.
If there's any comment that I get more than anything is everybody says I'm underpriced. But that's by strategy.
Okay.
Because I want to build that relationship. I want them to come back. I want them to own. So I have a nautical series that I call The Dangers of the Deep. I want people to be able to afford the whole series.
And these are the
could be
series
one
that
and
are
done.
limited to 150 of each piece.
Yeah. So within The Dangers of the Deep, I have the Sirens from the Odyssey, which is a mermaid perched on the rocks with these waves crashing, which is incidentally is Julia. If you look at close, I did a portrait, made her sit on the couch and pose. And I've got Blackbeard the Pirate, which is a self-portrait actually. And then I've got Moby Dick, and I've got the Kraken attacking his ship. I've got the ship caught in a maelstrom. I've got this whole series, and I've got people that have the whole series.
Yeah.
You know, and if I charged $1,000, somebody would, you know, save up and buy one. But the reality is they'll come in and they collect the whole series. And now I have a relationship with somebody that's ongoing, and we've become friends. And the number of people that have come to my home, we've broken bread together, and we've, you know, actually made a pen together.
Yeah,
You know, they was like, oh, I'd love to see one of these pens. And I was like, well, come on, let's go, let's do it.
Yeah.
You know, so for me, it's the bigger story than making a sale or charging the most that I
bigger
can.
things,
Is I want to build. To me, the interpersonal relationship with people is really what animates the business. And
Yeah.
Totally agree with that.
Yeah, so it seems like your business is as much driven by, let's be honest, no electricity company or mortgage company is going to take good vibes as payment, so it does have to make money, let's not shy away from that. But it's very much driven by you just want to do good, honest work, and you want people to enjoy it. Because ultimately, if people are enjoying what you do, you're going to be having a good time.
well, that's it.
It's it really boils down to something
Life's
as
way
simple
too
as
short to chase a dollar.
Yeah.
You know, the thing is, man, if you chase good relationship and you chase a good product and you do the best that you can, the dollars will come. I mean, it's just, it's the, you know, if you chase the dollar, it's, I don't know, it kind of bastardizes what I'm trying to do.
Yeah. Yeah, it becomes a whole different beast, doesn't it?
Yeah. It's dirty.
Yeah. And then, so we talked loads about the engraved style, but you also do the hand painting pens as well, which from speaking to you earlier are like huge time sinks. How does that all look? So you hand paint everything.
Yeah.
One of ones every time.
One of ones.
Do you repeat the artwork?
I do.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like on the hand painted stuff, and this was a mistake, I thought it would get easier to paint. You know, and so I thought, oh, I'll come up with this design, I'll hand paint each one. They'll all be a little bit different depending on my mood. Maybe it's a little greener, maybe it's a little grayer.
Yeah.
You know, and I would limit them to 20. Oh, that was the dumbest thing I've ever done.
Why so?
Because I see the flaws and I end up spending more time than I should. And here's the thing. There is a price cap of what people are willing to pay for a pen. And so as an artist, there's this really dirty thought process of, well, every leaf is costing me money. Well, I know this tree's not quite right. Now, to the untrained eye, will they even notice? Probably not, but I notice. And so I spent way more time on this pen than the customer is willing to pay. And honestly, it was a lost leader. Now, it got me a lot of good press. You know, you know, I went up against some pretty big brands. I mean, I competed with Pilot Pen Company, and I was able to win Best Fine Art Pen, and they have 20-something painters that work for them.
Wow.
And but again, it comes down to I lost money doing that.
Yeah.
It's a trade-off.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Ultimately, you still need to
ultimately,
make,
it's not really comparing apples to apples. I mean, it's a business, and honestly, I kind of so.
But then, as you
kind of
say, as a lost leader and as something that's maybe selfishly just allowing you to do what you want or need to do at that time creatively,
Well, that's it.
it's still,
I had to do it.
yeah,
I mean, anybody who's an artist knows there's no choice. You have to do art.
yeah.
I mean, it's a compulsion, and it's not about the money. It's just like, and
Well,
it's going
this
to
is
be,
it,
and you're
yeah.
going to carry it until it's done the right way, or at least
You
I
look
will.
at Wilco, you know, the first motorbike that Wilco, not the first one, but the first like full build motorbike that he ever done was months and months and months of work, of metal shaping, everything by hand, not for a customer. Like, he's just doing it because he knew he had to do it. It's like, I have this idea in my head and it needs to be a thing. And it's still sitting in his, and he will find a buyer for it because the right guy will pass. And I'd imagine, yes, there might be a cap on what you can sell pens for, but
There's always going to be
the
some.
right person will pass. That's just like, I need this.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's it. And then
That's
and then you've not only been able to satisfy everything that you wanted to do, but you've then seen someone that's just emphatically in love with what I imagine would be like the highest level of your art. You know, the hand painted version. Because, and correct me if I'm wrong, as much as the Scrimshaw stuff and your series of the Deep is all amazing work, it feels like that's maybe the dialed down, sellable version of the hand painted version.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, because the people that come through the pen show, most 90% of the people there, their budget at a $500 pen is like, they're like, oh, I didn't want to spend that much.
Yeah.
That's a lot. That's a lot. And so that's kind of where I come in. I come in at $475 for the Scrimshaw work.
Right.
You know, and it comes in to that, yeah, for most people, that's a lot of money to spend on a pen, and I get it.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like an impulse buy.
Yeah.
You know, the ones that buy the hand-painted ones, they're not worried about the money necessarily. But even those people, they've got a price cap.
Yeah.
You know, because after a certain point, you want precious metals, you want diamonds, you want,
Right.
you know, that type of thing. You know, you're buying jewelry that happens to write, not necessarily just a pen.
Yes.
You know, you're investing in a commodity of metals and that type of thing.
Yeah.
So,
And what about I normally ask what next. I don't think it needs to be necessarily what's next, because what you've already doing always has its place. But do you see a further expansion for your pens? Do you see another avenue that it can maybe go down that's maybe maybe it's a balance between doing that hand painted thing and it's still being not commercialised, but still being at that price cap? Is there a world there where you've maybe been doing some work on, or?
I think it's a different world. So, you know, within the pen community at large, I think it would have to be a completely different market.
Right.
The pen community is a thing. And ostentatious flashiness is very out of fashion right now in the pen community. You know, 10 years ago it was nothing for people to walk into a pen show and spend $10,000 on a pen. It happened all the time. You know,
Wow.
those big expenditures are drastically reduced.
Yeah.
You know, and so the pen community is more focused on, I think is more in the writers. You know, the people that are actually writing are the people attending the shows, instead of these people that are just wanting to have a flashy pen, like these big business guys that are looking for a statement piece.
Yeah, okay.
So I think it's going to be, to expand into that, I think is going to be in a different market. And I've definitely been looking at it. You know, I think we spoke earlier today. I had a neck injury last year. I have a tremor in my right hand, my dominant hand. I don't know that I'll ever paint again.
Yeah.
It's really been, I've been developing this skill since I was 5 years old. And it's been a tough journey, because I went from, on December 16th last year, I was perfectly fine. And December 17th, I lost the use of my right hand. I couldn't pick my arm up over here. I couldn't hold a pencil.
Yeah.
And the coordination is gone. I mean, it's like, man, the calligraphy that I spent years developing is, it's terrible. You know, it's shaky. The loops are wonky. I could not paint fur on a tiger. I could not paint a feather on an eagle right now if I had to.
Yeah.
So I have to adapt. I have to have a new vision, will it come back? I mean, the neurosurgeon told me it could be 3 years before, if I get full recovery, it could be 3 years before I have that full recovery. I'm certainly not there. So yeah, no, I am definitely in an existential shift right now of, who is Ryan Krusac, the artist? What kind of art does he make and how does he make it? That's a very big question.
And do you think that question expands to, is it something different from a pen? Or do you think it's, how do you express yourself in a different way on a pen?
I like pens. I don't want to change. I mean, I do. I want to stay with pens.
Yeah.
I think there's going to be some things that are going to come out in the near future about some changes. And I mean, I'll go ahead and say it. I am working on some things and some projects, and there's going to be a big shift, I think, aesthetically.
But still within pens.
Still within pens.
Sticking to
Still
pens,
within pens. It's just going to take a different feel because it has to. I mean, if I start to draw for more than 15, 20 minutes, my arm goes numb, my neck starts to hurt, and I have to stop.
Right.
I was down for 4 months. I couldn't do anything for 4 months, and it was a lot of painkillers. It was a lot of I was anesthetized on a couch for 4 months, and I cannot and will not go back there.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
So it was
primarily you need to look after yourself.
Well, that's it. I wasn't a husband. I wasn't a father. I wasn't everything that I wanted to be. I was a lump on a couch for 4 months, and so something has to change, and I'm figuring that out. So that's going to be a process. But you know what? The pen community has been a beautiful group of people that have supported it fully and have been
good.
Yeah, it's been amazing. It has been amazing.
Yeah. And what about? So obviously, like your whole brand is based on your name. That's what's on the front of it. Your logo is your initials. What about other people coming in to help you or apprenticeships? Has that ever crossed your mind? Is this fully yours? How do you feel about that?
Yeah, no, it's a mixed bag. So I started my company on purpose because I was in big business for 13 years, and it was, man, I went to a doctor's appointment. It was about 6 months before I got let go, and they were like, and the doctor told me, he's like, if you want to see your daughters get married, you need a drastic change of lifestyle.
Wow.
You are on a very bad road. You are way too stressed out. You are in very poor health. There's a lot going south right now. You need to really change. And so when I kind of built my company on purpose to not be able to scale.
Right, okay.
And it was.
So you made a conscious decision to not be able to scale it.
And that was probably a bad idea because I've just spent all these years now, and when I'm done, I just have to shut it down. I can't sell my business.
Yeah.
I mean, I really backed myself into a very small niche of being an expert in natural materials and artwork on those natural materials, and it's
Yeah. But do you not feel, certainly with some of the technology that you employ, the CNC machining and certainly the laser cutting and stuff, there's certain aspects of your business that someone could
There
help
are.
with?
And I have brought in some people occasionally. I've got a couple of young guys that are actually very interested in learning.
Good.
None of my kids are. I was really hoping, my daughter Zoe is graduating this year, and she has tentatively committed to help. But man, she's working on her pilot's license.
Oh, wow.
She wants to fly airplanes.
Yeah.
I mean, that's way more exciting than making fountain pens. I mean, she talks a big game. We'll see if she ever shows up in the shop after she graduates. But I'd love to work with her. We get along really well. It'd be an amazing thing. My daughter Sylvia has absolutely zero interest. I think she's walked down into my shop twice, and that was to, ask me for something.
Yeah.
That she wanted, not because she was curious about what I was doing.
Yeah, Dad, where did you put this?
Yeah, right. Yeah. And my son Caspian, maybe. Yeah, he's still young. He's 10.
Yeah.
There's a long ways to go there, but
feels like that'd be a nice project though, a little family make.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be cool. It would be a dream come true for one of my kids to be like, oh man, let me work with you. That'd be amazing.
Yeah.
Is it gonna happen? Probably not. I'm not gonna push it. I want them to follow their dreams like I was able to follow mine, and
It's a good outlook.
Yeah, it is. It absolutely is. And on that same basis of having other people coming to work with you, have you ever looked at courses? Is that something you offer, or is your revenue purely the sale of pens?
Right now, my revenue is purely the sale of pens. I've looked at other things. Now, 2 years ago, you know, Julia kind of hit a brick wall. And reached the end of her, for 17 years, she homeschooled her kids. We made the strategic decision that family was first and foremost, and one parent was going to be 100% with the kids. And we were going to raise our kids. We're not going to let the institutions do it. And her journey was complete. And now she's working. She's been a very successful real estate agent for a year and a half. She's doing fantastic, which is really taking the pressure off. And you know what was beautiful is she got her first closing check 2 weeks before I had my neck injury.
Wow.
Yeah. And it was, and I didn't work for 4 months, and she was starting to step in, and it was just this divinely ordained transition kind of thing. And she's really doing well. She's finding a stride. She's got so much energy that I haven't seen in her, and she's just like a new woman, and I'm loving watching her, you know, take off. And so part of what our family strategy is for me to kind of back away a little bit and to follow more of the passion projects.
Okay.
You know, now that I'm not the sole breadwinner and having to just follow the production and follow the shows and to do all these things to pay the bills,
takes a little bit of pressure off.
Oh, it takes all the pressure off. I mean, I mean,
okay.
she's doing better than I ever did financially. I mean, real estate is, way more lucrative than fountain pens, and she's doing fantastic. So it's going to allow me to be creative, do the things that I really want to do. But really what I want to do is I'm going to be stepping back a lot, and, I'm going to be working with, my daughter Sylvia. Zoe's graduating, so I'll be working with Sylvia and Caspian in homeschooling. I'm going to be teaching at the co-op, and I'm going to be really, really involved on that
Because you're
level.
a teacher.
I'm a teacher, right? Yeah, I mean, I have a teaching degree.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I wanted to do. There's just no money in it. And I mean, the institute, you can't teach in school anymore.
No.
You're just told how to teach.
You're following textbooks, aren't you?
Well, that's it. I mean, there's no teaching.
Yeah, you're teaching kids how to memorise something. I certainly remember when I was at school, it was, can you memorise this so we can go through it in a test later on?
No, I mean, when we taught, to give you an idea, Zoe and Sylvia, when they had an economics class, I made them start a business. And they started a business. It was called Zoya, and which is a mixture of Zoe and Sylvia's name. And they made pen sleeves and pen accessories, and they would rent their own space at a pen show, and they ran their own business.
That's cool.
So they outsourced things. So like some of the beads and stuff that they would use, they had to outsource to China, and they would get that. So they understood supply chain. They understood having to budget. I mean, everything. They ran every bit of their business.
That's cool.
You wouldn't get that.
No.
You're not going to get that in school.
No.
They did 9 shows a year with me.
Really?
Yeah. And so not only did they learn business, they actually made real money. I mean, my daughter just bought herself a baby grand piano. She's a pianist, and she
out with the business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
That's awesome.
Those
what
things
an
aren't
opportunity that's given to and a lesson to take to take forward as well. Did you have a similar upbringing to that? Were you homeschooled also?
I was not, but kind of. So my parents were both teachers. They're both retired teachers. They taught in a private school system. And so for 1st, 2nd, and 3rd grade, I went to a one-room school that was 1st through 8th grade, and there were 12 kids in the whole school. My dad was teacher and principal.
Wow.
Okay.
For 4th grade, we moved up to the big city, and my mom was a teacher, and there was like 50 kids in the whole school. And
big city.
Yeah, we were really, we were in it, And then from there, when we moved to Georgia, that was in Michigan. We moved to Georgia when I was 9.
Right.
And then I went to public school and stuff, but I kind of had those first grounding years where my parents were my teachers, albeit with other kids, but that's what we do with our kids. We're a part of a homeschool co-op, so they have exposure to other kids. They're very well socialized. They're in more activities than they need to be.
Yeah.
But,
that must be quite important, especially where you are, because it's reasonably remote here, where we are. It takes a bit of getting to. Small mountain roads and stuff to get up here, so I would always think the homeschooling thing could be quite
isolating.
Isolating is probably the best word for it, but having a co-op like that and having a support community.
There's more than 100 kids in our homeschool co-op. We meet every Tuesday. I teach a painting class, and I am an assistant teacher in the physics class. So these kids.
Is it quite common out this way?
It's very common.
Right.
Yeah, it's very common, and it's amazing. The social opportunities are incredible. They do. one weekend every month, there's this thing that they go to. It's called English country dancing, and they do traditional English line dancing, reel dancing, and there's 300 kids that show up to this thing.
Wow.
And everybody's dancing. It's not like going to a public school dance where everybody's sitting there, checking their phone and nobody's dancing. No, I mean, these kids are having a great time. I mean, it's an amazing group of people.
Yeah,
Wow.
that's cool.
Yeah, it is.
And how does that all affect or does not affect you as a maker as well? That's obviously how it affects you firstly and foremost as a family man and as your family pack, as it were. But what about as a maker? Being a maker can be inherently lonely, inherently difficult mentally because it is a lonely thing. Now, maybe you don't feel that, and you tell me if I'm wrong, in the pen community, because it sounds like that's a proper community. But certainly something we notice a lot with makers is the loneliness of it.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. The daily grind is very lonely.
Yeah.
And if I don't make a concerted effort to come out of my cave downstairs, no, it can be very isolating and lonely and depressing, honestly.
Yeah.
I mean, you were down there. There's no windows.
Yep.
Not yet.
Yep.
We moved here 3 years ago, and there's just still a lot of work to do. So it's a windowless shop. And I work 9-10 hours a day by myself. Mm-hmm. The machines are too loud to put in music, or I'll go deaf. The music in my ears would have to be so loud it would overpower the machines, even with noise canceling. It's very introspective, let's put it that way. I have a lot of time in my own brain, and that can be good and that can be very bad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And how have you dealt with that personally? For other makers, what would your tips be if that is something that they're finding very isolating?
Say that again?
For other makers, what would you say to them? Because it is something that's brought up a lot, is how lonely it is. Mm-hmm. How have you dealt with that loneliness, and how?
Do you break your day up?
No, I think I've dealt with it very poorly, honestly.
Oh, really? Okay.
I mean, honestly, yeah, no.
Yeah.
I think it's there's been times where I've gone through very grumpy and very negative phases. I mean, it's just like our Wi-Fi ID is Papa Shrek. I come up out of my swamp like an ogre a lot.
Right.
No, that's definitely it's definitely a weakness, and one of the things that that as a family we all recognize that I need to work on for sure. It's not
right, okay.
It's not always been peaches and cream.
Mm-hmm.
It can be. Artists are I think very emotive anyways. Yep. I know I am as an artist, and that it's very easy to kind of foster that negative and that dark place.
Yes.
Yeah.
But also that dark place that artists go to, man, it provides inspiration.
Yeah,
so it's a dual-edged sword, man. You get this great inspiration from those melancholy situations. Not necessarily great for family relationships either.
Yeah. Because your family, this is your hub. This is where everyone
Well,
is.
that's it. I mean, I work downstairs.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
You can't walk out the door and just and then come back into the house. You're already in the house.
That's it. No, you're right.
Yeah.
So that's a good point as well. You're talking about you come up the stairs and Papa Shrek on your Wi-Fi, and that being maybe an apt name in certain scenarios. How has that affected life for you as a maker, and how have you managed to compartmentalise that? And again, maybe tips to other makers that are working from home. The dream always feels like having a shop in your home. Having your workshop in your home feels like the dream. But what you talk about there is a very clear negative to it. It all becomes one bundled up space, doesn't it?
Oh, you can't escape it.
Yeah.
And here's the dark side of it. I'll tell you the dark side before the light side. The dark side is every time you sit down to watch a movie with your children, you think this movie is costing me $400.
Mm.
Yeah. There's a price tag attached to everything because I could walk 50 feet, and in the span of that movie, I could make $450 worth of product that I know I can sell.
Yeah.
And that is a very vicious thing to get out of, especially when things are tight, when things are going wrong, when everything in the house breaks all at the same time and you got to fix it.
Yep.
And that's a real easy temptation to slide into workaholic mode, which, oh, hello, my name is Ryan, I'm a workaholic. I love to work. I do. The positive side, the flip side to that is my kids' whole life, I have had breakfast, lunch, and dinner with them.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's the price tag on that?
Yeah, that's very true.
You know, it's
Can't put a price on that, really.
No, you can't. And you know, certainly, like my work is primarily in the film industry, and that's something that we talk a lot about, or not us personally, because we don't have kids, but the guys talk about is not seeing their kids. You know, we're often 5:30, 6:30, 7:30 start. 7:30, 8:00 would be a late start for us. You know, and a lot of these guys are commuting hours, so they won't be seeing their kids in the morning. Obviously, not lunch because we're at work, and then 6:00 wrap. Sometimes later, so they're not seeing their kids sometimes all day for 5-6 days a week. You know, and yes, you might be coming up grumpy, but rightfully so. You see them.
I'm still here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and we kind of we turned it into a joke to try to, you know,
ease it,
and not to dismiss it, you know, but it was, you know, a way of, okay, you know, this is our reality, and it's like, you know, we all have growing to do, and you know, I chief among them. You know, it was far better than what I was when I was in textiles. I mean, I was always on the road. I was either in Texas, I was in France and Turkey and Belgium and Frankfurt. I mean, it was like I was never at home. And then when I was at home, I'd have to fly. Like, there were days I didn't see my kids for 12 days at a time.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas now they are here.
Yeah, so is it living the dream? Yes. Is it a perfect dream? No. No, life is never perfect, man. We live in a fallen world, man.
Yeah.
You know, there's good, there's bad. It's what you make of it.
That's very
You
true.
know, I mean, it's what you make of it. You know, I think the way we've dealt with it, I've always been honest with my kids. Like, look, I'm not my best right now. I'm sorry.
Okay.
You know.
Yeah.
And that's fine, you know.
And that honesty must go a long way within it. So it sounds like you, and certainly from talking to you today, you're very honest, not only in your family pack, but in yourself. That must be one of the key things to your work being as successful as it is. You know, just being like super, super honest with yourself. You know, we talked a lot about like some things just aren't good enough.
Yeah.
You know, you had pens down there that you were showing us, and it's like, I wouldn't sell that because it's not good enough or whatever. And you know, to the naked eye, they're absolutely perfect. But that perfection always really interests me because, again, talking about double-edged swords, that's the double-edged sword in itself. You know, you seem really, really good at being constructively critical of yourself and your work. But then at what point do you feel that maybe hinders or benefits your work?
I definitely suffer from analysis paralysis, if you will.
Right,
Like,
okay.
it hinders me more than it helps me, for sure. I mean, it's just like, man, there are times where I know I should just stop. And I know that no one else is going to see what I see.
Right.
And I'll give people an optic, and I'll even explain. It's like, this is wrong. You're like, I don't see it. I'm like, no, look right there. This is not right.
Yeah.
And they're like, I don't get it. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
And it's taken me a very long time to not be overly critical of myself. And as I've gotten better at that, things have definitely loosened up. Because I have realized that I see things literally see things differently than other people do. They literally do not see what I see.
Yeah.
And I always assumed everybody saw everything the way I see them.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably a common story among artists, and especially somewhat tormented artists, you know, who just can never let go of their work because it's not quite right.
Right.
Being an artist in big industry broke me of that very quickly.
Okay.
You know, I mean, I was designing rooster rugs for kitchens.
Right.
And it wasn't anatomically correct. I mean, it bothered me to no end, and I just was having trouble with this stupid tail feather. But they shipped a sample. It sold like $15 million worth of rugs.
Right.
And I was like,
So successful by all accounts financially, if you put the financial
that tail
success.
feather, the fact, nobody knows the anatomy of that particular type of rooster. And nobody cares. They put it in front of their sink and they stand on it while they make their coffee and do their dishes.
Right.
And in a bigger level, that taught me a pretty valuable lesson. there's a level of detail that literally doesn't matter anymore.
So true.
Yeah.
And what matters is a beautiful product, not necessarily a neurotically correct product. Does that make sense?
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
it does.
not that you'd ever skimp on quality, but there are certain things within artwork where the artwork is complete.
Yeah.
You don't have to do any more. That's as good as it is.
Right.
It doesn't need to be.
There's a reason why there's only one David.
Yeah.
You know,
Dude.
there's like one guy ever who could do that. And if we try to make everything as an artist, if we're trying to do multiple works and you want all of them to aspire to the level of David, yeah, you're done. It's never going to work.
Do you consider yourself an artist or a maker?
Both.
Both. 50-50?
Oh, that depends on the day. Some days I am 100% feel like a craftsman and art is far from my mind. And there are days where I don't ever want to think about being a craftsman. I just want to make art.
Yeah.
It really is. That is really, like, when I wake up in the morning, I'm not sure which guy is waking up. And
Keeps it interesting, I suppose.
Oh man, no, it is. It's frustrating from the business standpoint because you know I have to wear a lot of hats.
Yeah.
I'm the CEO of my own company, which requires discipline and efficiencies. But I'm an artist, and that requires creativity and freedom. But I'm also a maker, which requires the rules of craftsmanship and precision.
Yeah.
And all three of those butt heads. So it's an interesting thing. I never know who's waking up that day, but I have learned to, whatever mood I'm in, to run with that, because that's where the quality happens. And if I'm feeling like the craftsman, that's where I'm going to sit in front of the lathe and I'm going to make perfect threaded parts all day long, because I'm just in that zone.
So your production line is of such that you can choose which hat you're wearing that day based on how you wake up. It's not like, oh, I woke up and I have to paint this today. I've got nothing else that I can start or stop. Or do you allow yourself that float within your workflow?
I do. I allow myself that, and typically with my customers, I try to be as honest and forthwith as I can about my timelines. And and what I have found is, as long as you have good communication, people are generally happy. And I always tell them, is like, listen, man, your project's not coming out perfectly, and I want it to be perfect. So listen, if you want it today, I'll ship it, but it's not gonna be right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
You know, and I was like, look, it's more important for me to get this right, and if it's not, and I can't get it right, I'm gonna start over.
Right.
And I've started over a number of times on people's projects, and I'll send them pictures and be like, look, I just don't like this. And they're always like, yeah, cool, man. I mean,
Well,
and what's beautiful about it is there's very rarely a pen emergency.
Right.
You know, I mean, every once in a while I'll get somebody's like, man, can you ship this today? I'm late on my wife's birthday. I need this to arrive tomorrow. Can you ship it? And they're like, no, but I've got this in stock. And they're like, all right, ship that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
Flexible.
but for the passion project, and I've got a project right now that's been going on for almost a year, and I can't get it right. And the guy is like, he's really happy to wait.
That's cool.
He's like, I really want this. This is a passion project for me, and I want it to be a passion project from you, and I don't want it if it's not the way you see it.
Yeah.
And I don't take anybody's money until it's done.
Right.
So it's not like, you know, they've paid me and I'm, you know, stringing them along.
Yeah.
And you know, I have yet to be bitten. I've had no one commission a piece and at the last minute bailed on paying me and wanted it.
Right.
And and so I feel good about it.
Good.
Yeah. It feels like that's something that you definitely should step back and be quite proud of. You know, someone just like, man, when you say it's ready, that's when I'll accept it. You know, it feels like there's a lot of merit to that.
Yeah.
That he's basically just bought into, you're the maker.
Yeah.
You tell me it's ready, and we'll go then.
Yeah.
You know, that's pretty cool.
It's fun.
Yeah.
That is one of the most satisfying parts about what I do is, I guess if there's anything satisfying, is when customers really step back and trust my artistic sensibilities.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hi, Zoe. That's my daughter. She just came in.
That's all right. What did you take from working, because obviously you're a maker now, but what did you take from working at a corporate level and a design point to this business? You know, I'm always interested. To me, it feels like if you were in marketing and if you were a photographer in a previous life and then got into making, you got it made. Do you know what I mean? Because you can get your stuff out there into the world. What did you take from your previous life to this?
All of it. Actually, I wore a lot of hats at that company because we ran on a shoestring. So I was the photographer. I was largely in marketing. Our sales guys, they were all about numbers. They knew nothing about the product. They knew nothing about nylon. They knew nothing about twist level of yarn. They knew nothing about any of it. So I ran all this. I mean, I did all the pitches, like, and it described all the product.
Yeah.
I did all the photography. We just did everything. It was a father-son operation.
Okay.
That grew into 400 employees, but I just worked with the father and son directly, and they were all about efficiency of just like, do what you have to do, get the job done, and we'll just leave you alone. And as long as things are getting done, I mean, and that was amazing, but man, it was the best education I ever could have asked for.
Wow.
I could not do what I do today if I hadn't done that.
Right.
I had no clue about business. I didn't even know what the word profit margin meant. I was an art major for crying out loud.
Yeah.
You know, and you can't run an art business if you don't understand the fundamentals of business. At the end of
it's equally as important, really.
Yeah.
Like running a business, you need to know how
the most
how it works.
important.
It's a difficult bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what about recommendation to other makers or people that are maybe on the fence of, oh, do I want to jump and be a maker? Is having previous experience like that, like actually doing the job important, or just learning about it, or what's your thoughts and feelings on that?
Be prepared to work.
Yeah.
Be prepared to work like you've never worked in your life. My hours doubled. When I went from working in corporate to working for myself, my hours doubled.
Yeah.
Just like that. The difference is, I don't have to ask anybody for a raise. If I want a raise, I go get a raise.
Yeah.
I find a new market. I go make more pens. I go, you know, I find a way to make more money. When it was before, if I wanted another day off, I had to go beg. Oh, please, can I have another day off? No, you've already used your 2 weeks. Sorry. You can take it without pay.
Yeah.
Um,
This is yours now. This is 100% yours.
100%. So, you know, it's, you know, it really is largely about work ethic and discipline more than anything. I mean, obviously you've got to have a little bit of savvy of understanding, you know, the marketplace and finding a niche. I'm not sure that other pen makers, there's a lot of room for other pen makers that are just going to come in and do, you know, run of the mill, you know, acrylic pens. There's already, you know, that market is saturated. You know, you've got to be smart and find an angle and develop a story, and it has to be a real story. People can smell. Yeah, they can. People can smell a fake story.
Yep.
And I think if there's anything that has made my company successful is, man, I've just always tried to be genuine.
Yeah.
And just be like, man, this is who I am. This is what I do. You know, and if it's not your bag, tell me what your bag is, and I know enough makers. I will connect you with the guy that will make what you want.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, and it says a lot not only about you as a person, but the confidence you have in your product to be able to do that. And I think it's the same, it goes for all makers. You know, we're, again, sound like a broken record, so lucky in the people that we speak to, but, you know, the best of the best are not scared to push you towards other people and just say, you know, go and check out this person. I'm not your guy. There is a guy out there for you. And I think that's something that is really special. And if you've got a community within pen makers, that you do all feed off each other, because ultimately community is always going to be better than competition for everybody, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah. Oh man, all the other pen makers, I haven't yet met a pen maker that I don't really enjoy, and I mean, man, all of them. I mean, you know, Jonathan Brooks, Brad Owens, Sean Newton, you know, Tim Collin, Pierre Miller, Brian Weaver. I mean, all these guys, we're all friends. We go to a pen show, we can't wait to hang out with each other.
Yeah, cool.
Awesome. And we're swapping stories and be like, hey, how did you do that? That's awesome. And it was like, oh, here, let me draw you a picture. This is how you do it.
Yeah.
I mean, you know.
That must also help from the loneliness, isolation, mental health point of view as well.
It does.
Yeah.
You know, it was
it's just
funny.
a chance to hang out with pals, isn't it? Yeah.
It was really funny. Somebody did ask me to do a couple of acrylic pens for him. And they wanted my specific shape. They liked my dimensions, and they wanted me to do some acrylic rod out of diamond cast. And so I did 21 pens for this person that they wanted. And I did a little post, and I got a real funny tongue-in-cheek reply from Jonathan Brooks. He's like, hey man, stay in your lane. You know? You know,
That's obviously his thing.
yeah. Well, I mean,
yeah.
it was all in good jest. I mean, he
Yeah,
knew what I
yeah,
was
of course.
doing, and you know, and honestly, I actually reached out to him because it looked similar to some of the blanks he was using, and before he even did it, I was like, hey man, this is what I'm doing.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, there's a real courtesy among makers that we really respect each other,
Yeah.
and understand what each other is really strong at and what they do.
And what about makers out with the pen world? Do you have much interaction with makers out with the pen world? Do you feed off each other? Do you feed off of other inspiration from other art? You know, one thing I'm always interested in is one, do you feed off of other artists, and do you take from that? But also, how do you stop other? Because ultimately, we all want our work to be original, don't we? But how do you stop that inspiration leaching in, or don't stop it leaching in?
That's a good question. I never really thought about that. How do you stop inspiration from leaching in? Yeah, I mean, I guess there's a fine line between inspiration leaching in and copying.
Yeah.
You know, and yeah, that's a blurry line.
Yeah,
That's a very blurry line. For me, from a strategic standpoint, is if somebody else is doing it, I don't want to even get close. And I've tried to do stuff that nobody else is doing at all. But even within that, you know, within my Scrimshaw work, I think if I looked hard enough, I mean, I think, you know, I look to lithographers. You know, Gustav Doré is a big inspiration. He was a lithographer and did all the engraving work for the Rime of the Ancient Mariner, which is a fantastic poem if you haven't ever read it. But his work is probably the biggest source of inspiration to me. And yeah, that was a real struggle is, man, he did such beautiful seascapes with line work that were just tremendous. And, you know, I looked a lot at his detail and how he worked. And yeah, I mean, I mimicked his technique without copying his work, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
You know, I would draw this analogy as it'd be like listening to a musician, you know, who's really got a cool vibe with staccato, you know, and kind of like, you know, hitting those notes, you know, boom, 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 but, you know, completely different melody, completely different genre, maybe even different instruments, you know, that type of thing. But you just kind of draw on that, you know, pop and lock kind of, you know, thing going on. And that's kind of what I was, you know, doing with Gustav Doré, is looking at, man, how does he create shadows? That's just such an amazing way that he's doing that with just a simple line.
Yeah. Brilliant. So, well, first off, we've taken so much of your time today, and thank you so much for showing us around and hosting us.
It's been amazing.
Kate's usually got, and I'm going to just make sure that we can hear this because we're worried that your mic doesn't have a light on.
Yeah.
Kate's usually got
yeah.
the creme de la creme of wrap-up questions.
Yeah, what advice would you give your younger self?
Ooh, what advice would I give?
That's what I get from, ooh, well, that's a hard one.
Man, what advice would I give my younger self? You know what? I would tell myself to lighten up. I would tell myself to have more fun. I would tell myself, demand good quality, but don't be so uptight about it.
I like it. Yeah, that's good advice.
Yeah,
I think that's great advice for anyone listening. Maybe advice I should take later. Thank you so much for your time today.
Oh man, thank you.
Thanks
man, this
for
has been
cooking
so
for
much
us.
fun.
Thanks
Oh,
for
man, thanks
showing us around. Your property's lovely. Your family seem great. Your cooking's wicked.
Yeah, thanks.
Well, I don't think it'll be the last time we're in this neck of the woods. That's for sure.
Definitely won't be.
You've got a place to land.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've got a couple of places to land in Georgia now as well.
Yeah.
We've got a downstairs apartment that overlooks the river. Just make yourselves at home.
Yeah, appreciate
Thanks
it.
You're always welcome.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Of course.
Thanks for your time again.
Yeah.
Thank
Wrap
you.
it up at
This has
that.
been fun.
Yeah, thank you.
All right.